We are here, the Programs, once again, to talk about the newly released Dream Theater album, Parasomnia. Just a couple weeks ago, we went and we saw the Radio City Music Hall show with the 40th anniversary finale for Dream Theater. We'll have some thoughts about that show. I was actually also at the Philly show, which was the opening show on February 7th. We'll have some compare and contrast between those two shows. But most importantly, we want to talk about Parasomnia, which is the latest Dream Theater release, released on February 7th. And I want to kind of share my thoughts on Sean's gonna talk a little bit, but I'm gonna start out with some of my thoughts on the opening two tracks. The first one, In the Arms of Morpheus, which is an instrumental, definitely got a cool title. Can't argue with that. I do not like the first minute of this track, which is basically just a lot of street noise and really no music. First minute and change, which to me is very annoying. Just play the song. For the music itself, I kind of compare this to the opening track of the self-titled 2013 Dream Theater album. Not something I yearn to listen to. I kind of, on that album, I just skip right to the second track. There are some great, Portnoy's got some nice triplets on the double bass drum in this song, which is nice to hear, but that's some of his signature sound you'll hear. Petrucci sounds great, but all in all, it's just not an Overture 1928, which, as you remember, just kind of blew you away opening the Scenes from a Memory. Again, you got to fast forward through the first couple minutes on that album as well to get to the meat, the opening instrumental. And then that obviously brings you into Night Terror, which by no means compares favorably to the opening single from the last album, The Alien, which we know won a Grammy. So in a sense, Night Terror is a bit of a disappointment. Listening to the chorus, I don't think they're breaking any new ground here. Kind of reminds me of Def Leppard. That's not a compliment. Taken in isolation, Night Terror is a solid DT tune, and the structure reminds me of a Nightmare to Remember. But there's some great progressive guitar, keyboard, melodic unison in the instrumental section, which every DT fan loves. It's the unmistakable trademark DT sound. Some of the guitar parts on Night Terror get a little monotonous and boring. It's got some terrible keyboard solos by Jordan, and the bass is really low in the mix. So I really don't know what Mayung is doing on this one. You can't hear him. Throughout the album, Mayung is low in the mix, and I don't remember any lead bass parts, which you usually get from Mayung. Petrucci's guitar solo on Night Terror, of course, does not disappoint. Very few of his guitar solos disappoint. So all in all, I'll say the first two tracks are a little bit of a disappointment. The rest of the album is better, but that's kind of my take on the first two songs.
Okay. All right. I'm definitely with you on the instrumentation. Is really good on Night Terror. We talked about this on another video, I think, back in maybe November, December, and In the Arms of Morpheus and Night Terror. I prefer to listen to these two as one long 15-minute piece because I think Night Terror works better with The Arms of Morpheus serving as the lead-in. These tracks are in the key of A minor and E minor, respectively, with some dominant E major on the latter on Night Terror. The minor keys set the tone for the darker mood of the album as a whole. Moreover, The Arms of Morpheus is played on the 8-string guitar, which is, I think, only the second time John P. has used this, which sort of lowers the boom on the listener, brings them to this really dark place. I do like the organic sound of the drums. I must say, I don't think this can be understated, and that's the production on this album is just phenomenal. I mean, it's as well produced, at least from my perspective, as any album I've heard in a while. Maybe with the exception of the new Steven Wilson album, but other than that, it's really awesome production. Um, I really like the organic sound of the drums, the double bass, and the introduction. As we know, this is a really dark album covering some dark topics, including nightmares and suffering in your sleep. For me, I think Terror works better in conjunction with the opening instrumental track. Standing on its own, as you pointed out, it's really just standard fare during theater. We've heard Portnoy do these sort of beats on the drums, right? Have you heard that with him? It sounded like he was just reverting to things he'd done in the past on other albums. That's not something that I think serves the album well.
Well, so I think a couple things about the drums, and really that whatever Andy Sneap did on the last album was tremendous, and he really knocked it out of the park on another level with Parasomnia. If you listen to the drums, they sound like freaking machine guns and torpedoes, and there's absolutely no distortion on any of the toms. I mean, it's loud, it's in your face, it's anything you could ask for as far as getting a great metal dream theater sound out of the drums. It's a on a scale of 1 to 10, it's a 12. Give these guys credit as far as whatever Andy Sneap did and whatever Petrucci did with the mix and the engineering and the production. I don't know how they do it. The guitars are exactly what you could wish for. Petrucci knows what he wants with his guitar sound. He's described it. Seems to get better and better. The overall production and the engineering of the sound. They get a better guitar sound on every record. This is the best sounding drums that Portnoy has had since Train of Thought and Awake. I thought those drum sounds were great. These are even better, whether it's the technology or the experience or just making these albums, album after album, having the experience of doing this for 40 years and recording so many albums. You know, like I said, you can't say enough about the overall engineering. The double bass drums sound ridiculous. I think, if you're talking about, does it sound like something from the past? Yes. Is it repetitive? Yes. But I think that's what they were going for. I think that's what Dream Theater fans generally wanted. They wanted Portnoy back in the band. I think having Portnoy back in the band is a net positive. And like Portnoy has said in many interviews on YouTube, you can read it. When these five guys get together, this is what it sounds like. Is it a step down from the last album? Yes, in some ways it is. The drums are less technical. Mangini was more of an acrobat and a technician. He does what no other mortal drummer can do. That's not Mike Portnoy. His style is more simplistic. It's more powerful. There's fewer notes. It's easier to follow. And it is his signature drumming sound. If you compare it to what they did in the 2021 release by Liquid Tension, I think the drums are more interesting on that album. The sound is not as in your face. And quite frankly, the engineering is not as good on that album. I do enjoy the drums on that last Liquid Tension album more. I think they're more experimental. You're hearing things that maybe you missed about not hearing these guys together. And so really overall, I would say it's a net positive. The drums and the production and the engineering and having Portnoy back in the band is a good thing. The downside is it is a little bit repetitive. And really the drumming, there's nothing on this album that I hadn't heard him do before. So all in all, I'll give it a thumbs up with some reservations.
Okay, so you want to do?
That's my overall take on the album. If you want to go into more detail or whatever you want to talk about, go ahead, and then I'll pick it up from there.
Oh, I thought you were going to take the next couple tracks, like maybe talk about.
Sure. So what I'll do is
yeah.
I'll talk about I have really my two favorite songs on the album. The first of which is track 3, which is A Broken Man. I love everything about this song. It has the unmistakable trademark DT sound. It has the great chunky staccato riff by Petrucci, which again sounds like something off of Train of Thought. And he still has those allusions to the Images of Words style riffing. I love Jordan's spooky keyboards on A Broken Man. They complement the vocals and the guitars perfectly. There's a wonderful instrumental section where Portnoy goes into a shuffle beat with a bluesy guitar and the great pounding signature double bass drums by Portnoy. Again, reminiscent of some of the most dramatic moments in the band's history. No matter what you think, they no longer sound like other bands and their influences from earlier years. They sound like themselves. 40 years is a long time to be together. They've established their own style and sound that no one can replicate. Uh, as far as Dead Asleep, we'll go to this one, which is the next track. To me, it's one of the stronger tracks on the album. Obviously, Petrucci once again really brings it with the crunchy guitars. Reminds me of Train of Thought and maybe Caught in a Web. Awake and Train of Thought, I think I said previously. Those are the drum sounds that this album kind of reminds you of, which I think were some of his best. Jordan has some good stuff on this record. But again, a lot of his solos, they kind of revert to that wonky sound, kind of out of place, and doesn't really add much to the music. I would say it's pretty much a 50-50 split. If you get your lead keyboard parts from Jordan, 50% of them are great, and 50% of them are pretty bad. It doesn't add much to the sound. So that's kind of my take on those two songs.
Okay, yeah, good points there. I'm definitely with you on A Broken Man. Riff starts off, the opening riff, that is, which you just alluded to. It's reminiscent of the riff from Honor Thy Father with that staccato sounding, almost dissonant sound that he's bringing on that. John Petrucci's using a six string, which is tuned down to standard D tuning on this song, which is interesting. It gives the song a bit of a heavier vibe, much like what Metallica did on Sad But True. There's a great mix of the drums, riffs, and keyboards in the opening instrumental section. I like the sinister vocal delivery by James LeBrie in the verse. It sounds like they did a good job of getting all the players involved on this one. But the soundscape they create here is what really stands out for me, especially bringing in some of Jordan's melodies during the heavy bridge section. Then my favorite part of the song might be what we hear at the 6-minute mark, which is a guitar solo where John is paying homage to Steve Morse. You can hear that from the first note of that solo, and it's a great guitar solo. So yeah, that's definitely. I was really pleased to hear this. I don't like hearing. I don't know about you, but I don't like when bands, and I know it's not up to the bands, but they release these tracks before I just want to hear the album as a whole. So I actually, I was a little bit disappointed at first with this one. I was like, okay, yeah, this is really, but I'm not going to listen to it again. So, but this is definitely better than the first song. However, I would have heard to just, I'm patient enough where I can wait to hear these things.
They had a thing with that. With the record company had this really weird timeline that everything was delayed. It's bad enough when they were like with A View from the Top of the World, they released The Alien in mid-August, and then 2 months later the album was out. Here you had to wait like almost 4 months, or maybe close to 5 months before the actual album came out. So I was really bored of the first couple songs because that's all I was listening to. I didn't have the discipline to kind of just not listen to the first two songs. So I echo your sentiments. I would have rather have heard one single and then 2 months later heard the rest of the album. But the record company, for whatever reason, they had other releases coming out. There was the holidays. You're not going to release an album in the mid-December, so they waited, and it was just not handled well. I think most fans will say the same thing. Waiting 5 months, having this waiting period and listening to the same song, especially when the first song they released wasn't one of the better songs off the album. So that's kind of the downside of what we've experienced over the last couple months. Not having John Mayung write lyrics on this album is a huge disappointment. As we got closer to the release of the album, I was looking forward to reading his lyrics. The rest of the band writes average lyrics at best. It's great that they had three guys contributing on a lyrical level. Most bands don't have that many contributions, that many different perspectives from different members of the band. So that's great that they had three guys, but they were missing the best one. He chose to sit this one out. That's fine. It's a weakness of the record, of any Dream Theater record that doesn't have a John Mayung lyric, makes it gives it a negative aspect to that album. That's one thing. Do you want to talk about any other songs at this time?
I agree that Mayung needs to step up a little bit there and be a little bit more assertive, because every time he writes a song, it's a great song. It's his lyrics are always, they're very deep and well thought out. And so yeah, I'm with you on that. Yeah, I think I would just talk about. I'll talk about a couple more, and then I'll just pass it back to you before we give our closing comments. Dead Asleep. There's two epics here. Dead Asleep is 11 minutes long. When I hear songs from the one that came out a few years ago, well, songs like The Alien, and songs like Paralyzed from Distance Over Time, songs like Barstool Warrior, those songs get me energized. When I hear songs like Dead Asleep or Midnight Messiah, they kind of leave me feeling a little bit deflated. And this song, Dead Asleep, I know it seems like it was just kind of forced into the album because it's maybe fits in with the concept as a whole. But the way as a listener, for me, it just doesn't really energize me. There is a nice guitar lead by JP. I do like the guitar solo in the middle of this song, but we probably heard better from him. And then there's one point in the song where you're thinking, okay, please don't give me another Jordan solo, but unfortunately, or however you feel about it, around 7:20, there is Jordan coming in with his usual solo with the wonky sounds that he brings that you talked about, and he's capable of so many great things. But with respect to that trope that they tend to fall into, I feel like they've kind of worn that out. I do like the interesting keyboard part at the 8:20 mark, but I wish they would have done more with that particular keyboard part. I don't know why they didn't. The outro riff is kind of cool, but the fact that the entire 11-minute song is in 4/4 makes it kind of a chore to get through. Have you ever heard a song? I mean, think of like the great epics, the 10, 12-minute epics, like the Camera Eye. I mean, that's not in 4/4. They're changing time signatures. Or, like the song they played the other night, the song off of Stream of Consciousness. That's not in 4/4. They're playing some sort of odd time signature in that one. And then I'll just close it off with the Shadow Man incident. Now, this is really, for me, what really moves the needle on this album. This is a 19.5-minute epic, and the band definitely saves their best for last for this on this one. I would put this song right up there with the band's best long-form epics. I like the sinister riff with the bass right up front in the mix at the beginning. This is a well-conceived track. It really moves the needle for me on this one. The song is played in the key of E minor, and the band plays in a whopping 23/8 time signature, which I've never heard any band play in, I don't think. After the opening riff, we hear this sort of section where you feel like you're watching the stormtroopers line up in one of those Star Wars movies where Darth Vader makes this dramatic entrance. Really cool feel in this part of the epic. There's a beautiful lead guitar part at the 3:40 mark, which adds some suspense to the song and sets up the listener for the first verse. I really appreciate the production on James LaGree's vocals. It seems like he's got a deeper and mature vocal style now, and the vocal melodies in the verse sound great here. You have some intense riffing by Petrucci, which leads into the phenomenal instrumental section. Portnoy's drumming on this track, as he provides a strong foundation for the heavy riffs, is worth noting. Jordan also makes some tasteful melodic contributions on the piano prior to the unison section, where John and Jordan really grab the listener's attention. There's more great riffing. You really feel like you're on a roller coaster here as a listener. There's a great instrumental section at 13:15. with John Mayung's bass way up in the mix, as you noted. That's always a welcome thing in any Dream Theater song, especially a long epic like this. I love when he carries the rhythm and sets things up for Jordan or JP. Finally, you have the majestic keyboard parts, which sets up the finale for the Breeze re-entry at about 15:50. Beautiful guitar solo at the end, which really provides a strong dramatic ending to the album as a whole. This track, I would give a 10 out of 10. So I'll pass it back to you for your comments, your closing comments.
Yeah, so really, what I'll do is I want to talk about a couple things. First of all, Are We Dreaming? I cannot understate this enough. This song is if you're going to make a 1 minute intro to a ballad or a 1.5 minute intro to a ballad, they knocked it out of the park on this one. I think Are We Dreaming works perfectly to set up Bend the Clock. So well done. It's right up Jordan's alley with the church bells and the organ, and I love the subtle whisper going into Petrucci's picking of Bend the Clock. Just a great song. It just gives me the spooky vibe, and it sets up the emotional picking that Petrucci has, which he is just a master at. We hadn't heard this in a while from DT. Bend the Clock is really my favorite song off the album. Maybe it's a little bit cringeworthy for some. It's got that catchy chorus that James uses and has James' more feminine sounding vocals. Some people probably don't like it. I think it works. Really sounds like a top 40 80s power ballad. It's very well produced. What an amazing guitar solo. Really brings this song to life. Jordan's string effects, obviously on ballads, he's a master at that. Right up his alley. Portnoy's more simplistic style of drumming really serves the song well, and that's something Mike Mangini simply could not do. He was too technically proficient to add to a song like this. He would have been a detractor on a song like this, whereas Portnoy's style really serves it well. The guitar solo is great, as I said. I think it's pretty long. It reminds me of the Voices solo with Portnoy doing half times on the drums, a lot of reverb on the guitar. And as I said, reminds me of Voices, which is one of my favorite Dream Theater guitar solos. Listen, I got a different experience with the Shadow Man incident. First of all, great title, spooky title. I remember reading that title 6 months ago, thinking, wow, this is going to be really good. Not one of their better epics, in my opinion. Does not compare favorably to A View from the Top of the World epic, the 20-minute epic from the last album. I don't hear enough of, I don't hear any lead bass, which is so great when we hear that from Mayung. You don't hear that at all in this album or this song. The Metropolis style riff that they go into with the tight snare drum.
Dude, you got to listen to like 13 minutes and 15 seconds. You have John Mayung's bass way up in the mix. He like carries that part of the song.
Okay. That Metropolis rhythm definitely works, but they've twisted that riff so many times now. It's just not as interesting as it used to be. I do like some of the instrumental section, which has the classic Dream Theater 16th note runs on the double bass and the keyboard and the guitar. And there's some great crunchy Metallica like riffs that Petrucci pulls out of his bag of tricks. There is a cool Jordan has a nice signature ragtime piano lead in the instrumental of this song with some great complementary drums by Portnoy. Again, as you said, the double bass, and I've said the double bass on this album at times is outstanding, and it's placed very well and it's executed perfectly by Portnoy, which says a lot for someone at his age doing these things. There's a sick guitar lead by Petrucci on this song, but being completely objective, I think the lyrics on this song are pretty bad. When I think about the epic song on A View from the Top of the World, I thought those lyrics were more compelling as it related to climbing Mount Everest and achieving tasks that you didn't think you could do. I really liked the way those lyrics were written. With Shadow Man, the lyrics seems a little bit forced and contrived, and let me just get these lyrics done and get it over with. this is boring me. I don't want to do this. But he had to do it because nobody else writes lyrics or doesn't write a lot of lyrics. And so it's just overall, I've listened to that song a lot. There are fun parts of it, and sometimes I'll be spacing out and not listening to it, and it'll get to that crunchy, fast 16th note rhythm on the guitar, and I kind of wake up, and now I'm listening to it. But a lot of it puts me to sleep. It's not one of their better epics, in my opinion. This album does not compare favorably to the last album. I thought everything about that album was better than this album. You touched on the fact that we've heard all this before from Dream Theater. Yes, we have. So I would give it, as far as it's not a thumbs up, it's not a thumbs down, it's more of a sideways thumb. That's about the best I can say for this album. I listen to it all the time. This is my favorite band, but it's not a top 10 Dream Theater album.
Yeah. Okay. So was that your closing comment?
I think so.
All right. So yeah, I mean, A View from the Top of the World. I mean, that's obviously a different album, but that closing track never. I can't say it ever really connected with me, but hey, we all receive things differently. So um, anyway, so I agree with you about "Bend the Clock." It's an unusual song, and it was definitely a welcome sort of curveball that they threw at us there. Um, Now, in terms of your remark about they're doing what Dream Theater fans wanted, for me, I see that as part of the problem. Um, why are they worried about that? I mean, they can make whatever album they want. Why be so conservative? You have to. Well, we got to have prog. It's got to be prog metal and it's got to be dark. And I think they should give themselves a little more freedom. I mean, they didn't. 30 years ago, whatever it was, in 1991, when they made their Images of Words album, were they worried about they didn't have a fan base. They said, we're just going to go make a great album. That's really the approach that they should have. In terms of who's producing, I'm definitely in the John Petrucci camp. I think he should handle the sound because I think he's better at that. And I think they should keep Andy, what's his name? Andy Sneap?
Andy Sneap.
Yeah, Sneap. The last guy they had was good too. Rich Chicky was great. Whoever the guys who they've had handling the sound, the engineering, the mixing, I think head and shoulders better than who they had with when Portnoy was the co-producer. However, I would say try to let Portnoy bring more of his influences in. He listens to more music than the other guys do. The other guys are mostly focused on Rush and Iron Maiden and Metallica, and yes, that's really it. When Mike brings in these other influences, like Muse and bands like that, that opens up their sound more and makes them more interesting. And I don't hear that here. I just hear, well, let's make another Train of Thought. Okay, well, it's a good album, but you're not going to get to that next level. And try to challenge yourself on your instrument a little bit too. The drums are, that first track doesn't seem like he's really challenging himself. But this is all about relevance, right? Because these bands, like whether it's Dream Theater or Metallica or the Rolling Stones, they want to stay relevant. They don't need to. Dream Theater does not need to make any more albums. They can just tour and yeah. So it's about staying relevant. Okay, well, if you want to stay relevant, you got to be willing to stack up to the other albums. So I put together a list here. Now, this is all the bands in the genre, the prog metal genre, that have put out an album in the last 3 years or so. And I basically used a 10-point must system. I'll show you. I'll just show you how, from my perspective, how I think this album stacks up. I can't turn. Oh, here we go. So I'm giving Opeth, Last Will and Testament is a 10 out of 10. I give Haken, Fauna a 9 out of 10. And that would be a 10 out of 10, but there's an issue with the mix on that one, which brought it down a little bit. Leprous, I put on an 8 out of 10. Melodies of Atonement, great album. I'm putting Dream Theater at an 8 out of 10. And then the last two I have here are Caligula's Horse, Charcoal Grace, Porcupine Tree, Closure Continuation. Both really good albums. I have both of those at the 7.5 out of 10. I really like what I heard on the Haken album in terms of the drumming. I think that those guys really are breaking out of the whole DT worship thing with this album. And I hear them going the extra mile. The epic they have on that album, they're switching between 6/8 and 7/8 for most of the 11-minute epic. So I think they put a little bit more effort into what they're doing at this point. So that's just one example, but I think this is how they stack up at this point in their careers. It's a good album, but right now it seems like with these bands, I would put them in, for what they're doing now, I would put them in the middle of the pack.
Now, I had the only album there that I've heard. The only other album there, no, I've heard a couple of them. The Last Will and Testament sounds pretty amazing. When I listen to Haken, I just I've listened to a lot of their stuff. It just doesn't do it for me. They're very technically proficient. I mean, obviously, good musicians, and but just they don't have the intangibles that Dream Theater brings. And it might be just James, without James LeBray, that's something most bands can't compare to. Even at his age, he just brings something. However you want to describe it, he brings something different to the metal sound. But it's good comparison there between those 5 or 6 albums. No doubt, Opeth in October or whenever it was released, that's an awesome sounding record.
And so I'm basically giving this 4 stars out of 5, 8 out of 10, however you want to break it down. What would your rating be?
I put it in the context of Dream Theater albums. I wouldn't. I can't speak to those other albums like you can. So I put it in the context of Dream Theater albums, and I would say it's not a top 10 album. I definitely have 10 other Dream Theater albums that I like more than that. And there's only 16. I think Bend the Clock is my favorite song off the album. And A Broken Man is great. And then after that, it's kind of mediocre Dream Theater.
Well, maybe they'll put out a better album next time. They're always.
I think it's going to be a while. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, you don't make money by putting out records. It's almost like every time they put out an album, it's basically just a gift to the fans. They don't get anything financial out of doing a record. It probably costs more money to produce an album that you get from selling it on Amazon and Apple. Apple and Amazon and Spotify or Google, whoever owns them, takes all the revenue now. So the financial incentive, or else they'd still put out an album every 2 years. I expect another album in 4 years, probably, maybe 5 years, depending. It'll help sell another tour 4 or 5 years from now.
Yeah.
Right. They probably, like they're going to be touring in the fall, I guess, back here the next year. And that's based on Parasomnia. You could only take the 40th anniversary tour so far, so they'll do another year with Parasomnia, and that'll make them a couple million more. But really, I think that the entire incentive to put out a record nowadays is to have something to tour with. And even then, like you said, they really don't need to go into the studio and put all this hard work in. And it is hard work. No matter what, this is a really serious piece of music that they put out. So it does take hard work and long hours and dedication. And, it's not easy for these guys at their age to do this, especially if fans come out and criticize it like we do. I'm sure it's not easy. One thing I wanted to say, Mike Portnoy sells his drumsticks when he's done with a tour. He auctions off his drumsticks. And some people have a problem with him doing that. I think it's a great idea that he sells his shit. If he can get $10,000 for a drumstick, take the fucking $10,000. He's earned it. That market value for his fucking drumstick is $10,000. Take your $10,000, buddy. 90% of his fans probably don't even buy the record or go to his concert, so they're getting free entertainment from him. Let him make his money when he can make it. These guys, they've given their fans a lifetime of musical enjoyment. They've gotten their money's worth. You don't have to buy the drumstick. Why criticize him for taking the money? I'm sick of hearing that. Let the guy earn his pay, especially when he's not getting paid for what people historically have been paid to do. So
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know. I'm surprised that many people buy it, but yeah, I agree with you. Just these guys got to make money any way they can. You know, it's got family to think about. I mean, yeah,
he's got family. Maybe he's got kids in college. Let him pay for their kids' college.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Any more thoughts on Parasomnia?
No, that was pretty much it. I do think it's a good album. You know, and I definitely they definitely get an A for effort.
Yeah, without a doubt. Without a doubt. And I'll say again, the drums and the guitar are not easy things to produce, as are the vocals. I'm sure James, at his age, struggled with recording a lot of this. And I know it took a lot of time to record the vocals, but at his age to put out this effort, I think is admirable. And, you know, they took care and prudence in the techniques they used to record it. They took time writing the songs, and they definitely delivered. It's just that when you compare it to their catalog, they have such an unbelievable catalog now over 40 years. I'm not going to say I'm disappointed, but I'm not going to lie and say it's one of their best albums.
All right, cool. So I guess we'll do the Stephen Wilson is next on the list, right?
Yeah, stay tuned for that, folks.
Yeah, 2 weeks, right?
All right, take care. This is Prog Rob signing off. Peace.